And good afternoon, everybody. Today is our last session for this FCPM course. Uh, we have been talking about the various symptoms and how to manage. And we understood that
Sorry, Sunil sir.
opioids.
Sunil sir, your voice is not clear, sir.
I am able to hear Sunil clearly.
Okay.
How about the others? Anyway.
We understood that opioids are one of the main group of medicines in treatment of pain and many other symptoms. So we know that the opioid availability and the access to it is difficult in many parts of India, and many of us don't know what we have to do for getting strong opioids. This class is particularly dealing with that situation, how to overcome the barriers for opioid availability. Rajagopal sir will be taking this class, and it's over to you, sir.
Hello, everybody. I was looking at the screen and almost everybody is invisible. Gina, thank you for Gina's photograph is visible. I won't, if you have a connectivity problem, that's okay. If not, can you have your videos on? After all, this is virtual. And even the video is the only sign that we have that we are people and not only computers. Please switch your video on if your connectivity permits it. See all these beautiful faces, and we were missing all that. Okay, I will make an assumption that the others either do not have the connectivity, the satisfactory connectivity, or had not put on their makeup today. So quite understandable either way. Hey, this is our last session. Good to get together again. And let me ask you a question. Is there anybody in the group who comes from Punjab? Not one, huh? Nobody. Is there anybody who comes from the northeastern frontier states like Manipur? No. Okay. I mentioned those states because the problem that Sunil mentioned is particularly bad in those states and particularly bad in Punjab. In Punjab, opioid is an obscene word. That's because of the history of addiction. Border states have this problem of trafficking of opioids from across the border. So that results in very strict regulations, and therefore very strict application of regulations, and the problem is particularly bad. I had requested a guest to join for today as an observer. I don't know if he is here yet. No, he is not here yet. I think. A couple of people do not have their names mentioned here, I think. So it could be one of them. I got this message this morning from a doctor, a pain physician. If he is not here, I don't want to mention names. Pain physician in Gujarat, saying that they have now, with the new regulations in opioids, a problem in accessing opioids. So we are trying to improve things, and actually some things are worsening. So what we are going to do today is to talk about the regulatory barriers to opioid access and how those problems can be overcome. Many of you will want to start off using opioids. You will go to the pharmacy, you will go to the medical superintendent, and they will say, no, no, we don't want oral morphine. Don't start a fight, but don't give up. Learning palliative care doesn't result in relief from pain. Walking away when the pharmacist says we are out of stock doesn't relieve the pain. You are champions. In a country where 98% of people do not get access to pain relief, you are champions striking a new path. We shouldn't just go back and give up and go back, because if you do, you who have an interest in this subject goes back, and then people will never get pain relief. So I'm hoping that we will all take it as our responsibility, not only to learn pain management, but also to make the process happen so that people will get pain. Sunil, do I understand correctly that at the end of, at 4 o'clock, after this session, you will be turning to feedback session?
Oh, yes, sir.
Sorry about this. Give me a second to get this organized. Sorry. I want you to read that. Tell me what you think about this. Any comments will be welcome. No? No comments? Absolutely no comments? Okay, whom do I see right in front of me? Dr. Arsha and Dr. Jayanti. You have learned a bit about pain management and palliative care.
Yes, sir.
Inside, ethically, are you able to accept that you have this responsibility?
Yes, sir. We know that for pain management, opioids are a blessing. Hello?
Yes, Arsha, we could hear you.
Yeah, but on the other hand, there is a big social stigma. Even if a mild stigma not only among the common people, but also among the doctors about opioid use of creating addictions and abuse. So I do accept that it is our responsibility to clarify the doubts and make them aware that if judicially used, it can be a blessing.
And very good. Thank you, Arsha. But I also add the first bulleted point. You have the responsibility as a, maybe as a medical doctor, your responsibility is only to prescribe it. But as a human being, doctors are also human beings. Arsha and I are human beings. As who has written Being Mortal by Atul Gawande? Anybody has written read the book Being Mortal by Atul Gawande? Oh, you must read that book. I'll put up the name in the chat box. Atul Gawande. He talks about the citizen doctor. There are two kinds of doctors. The medical doctors who are scientists. You are concerned only with diseases and medicines. The citizen doctor is also a human being, accepts responsibility not only as a medical scientist, but also as a member of the society. And I hope we will all accept this dual responsibility of being citizens also, not only scientists. Sunil, I don't want to. Okay, I mean, I am putting this name in the chat box, the name of the book, and Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. I put it up on the chat box. Important book to read. Okay. What I am saying is, as not only medical scientists, as citizen doctors, we have this responsibility. We need to use it judiciously. Judicious was the use that Arsha used. I agree. We need to use judiciously. We want to keep the documentation proper. We do not want your morphine or something to go out into the streets and cause addiction. But we also have the responsibility to make opioids available for those in pain. And this is the principle of balance. But Arsha said the stigma is not only among the public, but also among the medical personnel. Sunil, if you are still there, can I ask you a question? In your experience, who have the greater stigma, the lay public or medical doctors? Maybe Sunil has gone for something else, but I'll tell you, answer the question myself in that case. The lay public is reasonably okay. It is the medical doctors who have the greatest stigma, because from our second year of medical education, we have heard about addiction in physiology. In pharmacology, you got 2 marks by saying that the biggest problems with morphine are respiratory depression and addiction, firmly rooted there. And your professors have kept on repeating it. And over all these years, you have this belief. One fear is about respiratory depression and that other is about addiction. And all of you, please note this. This is an important distinction to learn. Withdrawal symptom does not mean addiction. Dependence can be physical or it can be psychological. Psychological dependence is called addiction. Physical withdrawal, say especially after 3 weeks of continuous use, the longer the use, the more it is, can happen in anybody. You suddenly stop it. The patient has low energy, is tired, sleepy, disoriented. Hey, notice this. The symptoms of withdrawal are remarkably like that of addiction, like overdose of opioids. Disorientation, neurotoxicity of morphine, similar. Disorientation, delirium, myoclonus, jerky movements, except abdominal cramps and diarrhea. Of course, they'll also have pupillary changes, but abdominal cramps and diarrhea are common. These are all physical symptoms, physical dependence symptoms. These can be easily solved by gradual withdrawal of opioids. I clearly remember this patient who had been on opioids for 2 years, did not permit radiotherapy. Finally, he had a wound and it had started seeping. And then he went for radiotherapy. And all of a sudden, his pain was gone. And we got no problem. We recommended that it be gradually withdrawn over the next 6 weeks, but he could stop it much sooner. So I hope this is clear. Physical dependence is manifested as withdrawal symptoms on discontinuation. That is not addiction. Addiction is craving for the substance, not craving for pain relief. That will occur in anybody. That's called pseudo addiction. If are you with me still? Hello.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to have to. My screen has all of a sudden gone blank.
Yeah, we don't see the PowerPoint. I think we don't.
Yes, sir. I think some technical issues.
Mm.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir. You are
Yes,
audible.
sir.
I'm sorry about that. I don't know what happened, but I am back with you. Host has disabled my screen sharing. Hello, host. Can
Sir,
you enable my screen
yes,
sharing?
sir. Yes, sir. Sir. Now you are powered. You can do anything, sir.
So, addiction on substance is craving, even when pain is relieved. The person with addiction will never be satisfied with the same dose. His dose requirement will go on increasing every day. He will want more and more and more. He will have unsanctioned dose escalations. Dr. Jayanti has asked him to have 20 milligrams 4 hourly. Give us enough medicine for 2 weeks. He comes back after 4 days and says, my drugs are finished. No, I had more pain. I had to take more tablets, which may be true. Don't assume that he's an addict. His pain may have increased, possibly because he had a fracture of the rib, something like that. We will take that into consideration. But if without a physical reason, dose is rising remarkably, we will be cautious. It doesn't usually happen. Only one among many thousands gets addiction, especially in cancer. In non-cancer, it's more likely because of more prolonged use. This is very unusual. And the addict also has behavioral changes. They will do anything to get hold of the drug. Their whole mind is full of procuring the medicine. They cannot think of the family. They cannot think of other people suffering. They cannot think of their own health. Their concentration is only on getting more of the medicine. Please remember, addiction is rare with oral morphine, and it is clearly not a problem with cancer, because in cancer, it's cured, or over some time patient dies. Either way, we are able to stop the morphine. Whereas if you use oral morphine or something like that with a low backache, then the duration of administration may be many decades. Then it's more likely. Is the difference between physical dependence and addiction clear to everyone? Anybody has a question to ask, either by chat or in person to me? Please unmute yourself and speak if you have a question. Is this clear?
Excuse me, sir.
Yep.
I'm Dr. Archana.
Yes, Dr. Archana.
The physical dependence signs, do they simulate with overdose of opioid?
Very good. Yes and no. Yes, because look at this. The bullets 1, 2, and 3 are remarkably like opioid overdose, right?
Yes.
Very good. How about the fourth bullet?
No, fourth one is not.
Exactly
Yes.
the opposite. Exactly the opposite.
Yes.
Hmm?
Yes. So how do we differentiate between these two? Like we have given more dose and
We
let
can
us
wait.
reduce it.
Wait a minute, Archana. These are
Okay.
withdrawal symptoms. You will
Okay.
not find it during administration.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
Same symptoms happening during administration will indicate toxicity, and on
Okay.
withdrawal will indicate withdrawal symptoms.
Okay. Yes. Right.
Archana, I'm very glad you asked the question so that we had an opportunity to clarify that for everybody.
Okay.
Anybody else? And just as a evidence, in the early days, the early part of the century, we studied every patient for whom from our unit in Calicut, morphine was given. We followed up everyone. If 5 tablets were missing, we investigated that. We did not even have one patient coming with craving, increasing dose, unsanctioned dose, or anything like that. Nobody needed more, maybe a little bit. Sometimes people take a few extra doses, that's understandable, but we followed it up. And this evidence, you can easily find on the net, it's there on our website also. So sometimes when doctors are willing to listen, we share this evidence with them. And I brought it up here because this will be shared with you, and maybe it will be good to remember this. So when patients are in agony, that would be at least 1.5 million people with cancer pain and many millions more with other problems. We have the responsibility to ensure access to opioids, ensure that it is safely available and not diverted to the streets. And this is even harder. We have to ensure that your pharmacy has it uninterrupted. This is a struggle in many states. Some states more than other places. Do please contact us when you have problems. Please don't think that you are troubling us. Sunil, I and my other colleagues consider our duty, our solemn duty and our privilege to help you procure uninterrupted opioids so that your patients get benefit. If there are interruptions, if you cannot get the orders, then we will have to assess what are the barriers, where are the catches, and we will have to take remedial measures. And we will do it together. Make sure that our documentation system is proper. You are not going to do it personally for everybody. Your nurse, your pharmacist, everybody must be clear about how it is to be done. And we keep checking it. In my unit, the licenses are in my name, and I personally have to sign the register periodically, not after every dispensation, but periodically. And finally, as Arsha said in the beginning, there is stigma. People are afraid. So all the more reason why we will have to advocate for access to pain relief and for safe access to opioids. Here what used to be the biggest barrier to opioid access. The biggest barrier was the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act of 2014. Joined yet? Because he was telling me this morning, Dr. Arvind Patel, by any chance, are you here?
Yeah, I am here right from the beginning.
Oh, welcome to the group, Dr. Arvind. Now we
Yeah.
are going to talk about some of the things that you specifically asked about. The law. The law was created in 1985 and it caused huge problems in access to opioids. See, the book is so heavy. So this meant that every institution had to get many licenses from different agencies. And finally, in 2014, the law was changed. Unfortunately, though it solved the problem for a lot of people, it created a lot of problems for many people. And Dr. Arvind Patel is one of the people who found that he had new problems to tackle. Now, let me tell you what was when we changed, I said we changed the law. What was the change? The 1985 law insisted on multiple permits, licenses and permits. This is the hangover from the British days. Gujarat, for example, has a manufacturer of opioids, West Coast Pharmaceuticals. So if West Coast Pharmaceuticals was making the morphine and Dr. Ranjam Jod in Jaipur wanted the morphine and wanted an order, she first had to get a possession license. To bring it from another state, she had to get an import permit. And then West Coast Pharmaceuticals would need to get an export permit to send it to another state. And from within the states, in many states, to transport it from city to city, you needed yet another permit. 3 to 4 permits were needed according to the old law. Multiple agencies were involved. That is excise, drug controller, and very often Ministry of Health or Director of Health Services. And unfortunately, I have gone through this problem in the 1990s in Kerala. I will get the possession license. After that, I had to apply for the import permit. And by the time the import permit comes, the possession license has period validity expired. And once I had the problem that I got this, then ordered the medicine. The manufacturer at that time in Mumbai had to get the export permit from the local officer. That was delayed, and they actually sent the medicine. And when it came, our import permit had expired validity. We were not allowed to open it. We asked the drug controller, what can we do? He said, nothing to it. You have to send it back. We had to send it back to the manufacturer, and our own people weren't paying. So these were many of the problems with the old rules. So the law that I said was changed in 2014 meant the law created a new class of medicines called essential narcotic drugs. And the law said, hereafter, individual states cannot have their own rules. The whole country has one law for essential narcotic drugs. So they brought in the class of medicines called essential narcotic drugs, and also created this group of institutions. Any institution approved by the state drug controller as a recognized medical institution now no longer needed the licenses. No licenses necessary. This was beautiful in principle. I didn't have to go to excise anymore. You just apply to the drug controller. Drug controller gives you a certificate, you are an RMI. Khatam. You have the medicine, and then you don't have to get these licenses for every consignment. You just order the medicine comes, you use it. This was what we had asked for. Now, you should know that this was the law. Law is created by the parliament. Now, for implementation of the law, by executive order, the Department of Revenue created the rules. Remember the difference between the act or the law and the rules. An act is a law that is passed by the parliament or the state legislative assembly. In this case, the state legislative assembly no longer can create rules for essential narcotic drugs. So, Department of Revenue created these rules. They were published in 2015, a year after the law was created. The process was in all this resulted, even this law change followed 19 years of our work to change the law. And then we worked with the Department of Revenue. The problem was we would sit together in the Director of Narcotics office, create the draft. Then it would go up to the Deputy Secretary, Joint Secretary. We no longer could see the file. We had no control. The Secretary, then it goes to the Finance Secretary, then it goes to the Minister, and it comes out as an executive order. The rules, when they came out, had huge problems. The good point is, Dr. Arvind and others, that to change them, we don't have to go back to the parliament. These can be changed in a day if the Revenue Secretary wants. Now, the rules put in these three medicines along with some others which are not relevant. Some industry influence came in. They insist on putting in oxycodone also, which we did not want in this country, which was the cause of all the problems in the USA. But these three are included. So essential narcotic drugs are part of the law. Inclusion of these medicines are part of the rules. And if the Revenue Secretary decides to change the rules, we can add more medicines. Today, pethidine is not included in among them. It can be easily brought in. Now, the new law also said, new rules also said, any institution has to be a recognized medical institution to stock and dispense essential narcotic drugs. Now, here came a problem. Dr. Arvind Patel, I don't know him. I haven't met him personally. We met up electronically this morning. He is a pain physician, an interventional pain physician. He used to be able to access these medicines. That would be by the NDPS Act of 1985, even though at that time he needed a possession license. But he is in Gujarat, where there is a manufacturer. So he doesn't need an import permit or export permit. It was easy for him. And now look what happened. They tell him to be able to order these medicines, you have to be a recognized medical institution. So for people, not only for pain physicians like him, for people who were using opioids for emergency rooms, intensive care units, operation theaters, surgical wards, everywhere this problem happens. The rules also said in every institution, if you are to be an RMI, say you are in a hospital, okay, WellCare hospital. WellCare hospital to be recognized as an RMI, you should have one doctor who is named in charge. That has to be an MBBS or BDS person, has to be in charge. The doctor should have had training in pain management. That's what the rules say. We did not really want all this for every hospital. We wanted it only for pain management units which use oral opioids. But this was the way it came out. The nature of the training is not mentioned in the rules. So who will decide? The drug control of the state is today able to decide. The Department of Revenue said, hey, Ministry of Health, you decide. Ministry of Health did not take a decision. Nobody took a decision. Drug Control General of India did not take a decision. So in every state, their own rules apply. For example, in Tamil Nadu, you give any certificate of training, the Tamil Nadu Drug Controller accepts it. Any training in pain management. I also foresee from 2014 onwards, the problem will not be there because pain management is now in the curriculum since 2019. Theoretically, at least any doctor will be passing out from 2014 onwards will be considered to have had training in pain management. Indian problem was that MBBS did not include modern pain management. Now, because this created a problem in many ways, I haven't brought up every problem in the new rules. There were several problems there. We went back to the Department of Revenue, briefed them about all the changes that are necessary. They were very receptive, very nice people. They prepared a new draft for revision of the rules. This happened in 2016 and it went up. Again, it goes Deputy Secretary, Joint Secretary, Secretary Revenue, Secretary Finance, Minister. But by that time, several things happened. The department decided to send it to Drug Controller General for approval. It got there for many months. Then it went to Ministry of Health for opinion. We even now do not know what opinion came for. There was a considerable delay. By that time, a proposal was given, created in Government of India. Narcotic controls should not be with Department of Revenue. It should go to Home Ministry. All this got stalled. So what am I saying? I am saying that though a revision of rules is necessary, though it can be done fairly simply by the Department of Revenue, it has not happened. It was simple. It is not simple anymore because of the policy confusion in the government. So where are we now? What I am going to talk about is what we can do now. For Dr. Arvind or for any doctor, according to the rules, The process is fairly easy. The forms are given here, and anyway, after today's session, all the forms will be given to you, will be emailed to you. It's a fairly simple process of application. The rules mandate that in 2 months after your application, the drug controller has to give you a response, either an acceptance, approval as an RMI, or rejection of your application, citing a reason. Here comes a problem. So in one of the states, okay, I mean, this happened in Uttarakhand. Uttarakhand, one institution applied for RMI. They got no response. They went to the drug controller. They said, that's no problem, we'll approve it. I'll send you the order. But what they got was an order from a lower level, came a question. Please give us, send us the floor plan of your institution. And also send us your registration with the National Accreditation, NABH, National Accreditation Board for Hospitals. I am warning you that these barriers may be created. We shall find out about the current situation in Gujarat, Dr. Arvind, but generally, sometimes some drug controllers create a problem. So when we heard about it, we wrote a letter from our WHO collaborating center to the drug controller of Uttarakhand with a copy by registered post to the health secretary, saying that in the application, the institution was asked for the approval for the floor plan and for the National Accreditation Board approval. By the NDPS rules, neither of these is necessary. When you ask for documents which are not mandated by the rules, that is against the law of the land. This is causing suffering to patients. Therefore, please do the needful. We sent a registered letter, and within 2 weeks, the institution got the approval as RMI. So what am I saying? There may be issues brought up. That may be due to lack of knowledge, and in some states also attempts at corruption. We should not submit. In Kerala, in our palliative care organizations, we have made a firm stand. We will never give 1 rupee of bribe to anybody to get anything done. Because once you start doing that, there's no end. We will have to fight it out. I will also encourage you to look at this website on our website for best practices for opioid access. Once you get the recognition as an RMI, with the application, you must include some certificate of training. For those who have completed the course, Rajalakshmi or Arun will be sending you a certificate of training. You will have to enclose a copy of it. You will have to, the process when you are sent a document, this one will tell you what all forms to use, what all procedures to follow. It's not very complicated. Apply for approval as RMI. And remember, once you get the approval, you don't have to ask for any permission from anybody to give an order to the manufacturer. Just go ahead and give the manufacturer the order, enclosing a copy of your RMI certificate, and you have the medicine. That's what happens to us now. But once it happens, as it is shown in the best practices, we keep the documentation. Every patient's name, age, registration number, etc. are entered. 2 copies of the prescription are necessary. We give 1 to the patient. The other prescription is in our file. This is the process now. For hospitals, which used to get opioids from according to the old regulations, going through excise, In some states, including in Gujarat, the new rules are insisted on. When the rules are modified, which is, I told you, it is got caught up in the ministry. If it comes out clarifying it, only palliative care institutions will be required to have the RMI. But that is, we have no guarantee that it will happen. To Dr. Arvind Patel and to people like him, my request is, we will work with you. Let us apply for approval as RMI. It will free you of many requirements. You will get your RMI certificate and then you can just place the order. But to continue to get medicines according to the old rules for hospitals, other clinics, we will have to wait till the new revised rules come out. We don't know when that will happen. So far, our efforts have not succeeded. Now, unlike the palliative care that we talked about during the last few months, this was more of a dry subject. Procedures, laws, rules. I'm sorry about that. And I'm not sure that everything will be clear. These are confused waters. So please ask your questions. Course participants, please come out with their questions first, and then we'll hear from Dr. Arvind also. Thank you, Sunil. Thank you. We do have some more time for discussion, says he, Sunil. So please go ahead.
Anybody want to ask any questions regarding opioid accessibility? Any of you are planning to start a new palliative care unit?
Arun, we have participants from other countries in this group?
Yeah, Dr. Bismi.
From?
Yes, sir. Actually, sir, all government institutions are deemed RMIs. Is that correct, sir? Ours is a government institution, but we still don't have morphine.
Archana, all government hospitals, according to the new rules, are deemed RMIs. I deliberately did not include that information because it means nothing unless, because even then, it is necessary to have one doctor designated as in charge. And government hospitals have to go through the process because a private hospital can just fill up the forms and submit them tomorrow. Whereas you have to go through the process and the red tape. So,
Yes.
Doctor, you are absolutely right. Dr. Bismi, where are you from?
Sir, I am in Trivandrum only.
Bismi, even though are you a government servant?
Yes, sir. I am working in ESI.
Dr. Bismi, please let us proceed with this. The government is keen on starting palliative care in ESI. The director is very keen, so that's how you possibly came in. There will be these issues. Please keep in touch with us. Yes, you are totally correct that the law, the rules say deemed RMIs, but we still have to go through the process. We will do that. Which hospital are you? Are you in Perurkada?
Yes, sir. I am at Perurkada.
So Sunil, we have an ally. We have an ally to closely work with. Bismi, is there any other doctor from ESI in this group?
Sir, not in this group, I think.
Okay. But I am glad to see you here, Bismi, because we invested quite a lot of time in ESI, and we am finally glad to see that something is happening.
Sir, I'm also grateful. Thank you, sir.
Anybody else with Dr. Farida? Which institution are you from? Sunil, did you say that we have people from other countries?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have some people from other countries.
Who? Which country?
Sir, from Bangladesh, Nepal.
Okay. Nepal actually has Nepal. Which city are you from? Who it is? The doctor from Dharan. Because Nepal has better availability than India. They buy the morphine powder from Switzerland because Indian red tape is too much. So though we have it next door, they don't buy it from us because our red tape. And they import and make their own tablets. And Nepal system is better than India's. Bangladesh also recently changed their regulations. And I do not know how things are actually, but I heard that after a long struggle, Bangladesh developed access to opioids. Arsha, where are you from?
Sir, I'm from Kochi.
Which institution?
Sir, at present, I'm not working.
Okay. Okay. Archana, where are you from? Arsha, are you going to start working pretty soon somewhere? Are-
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Arsha
There are two
first, sorry.
Archanas.
No. That was Arsha was the previous conversation restarted. Sorry, Archana, just give us a second. Yes, Arsha. Arsha,
Yes,
will
sir,
you?
I do want to work. So at present, hello?
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, Arsha, we are
Yes, sir,
audible.
I do want to work. Yes, sir, I do want to work, sir.
Okay.
I'm just jotting down and I'm looking into, like, I'm in constant touch with Dr. Rajam Iyer, ma'am.
Hmm.
So I'm planning out if I could get it into somewhere.
But Rajam is in Mumbai. You are in Kochi.
Yes, sir. Like, she has some friends
Yeah.
over here, so she
Okay.
told me that she will correlate me with them.
Okay, very good. We'll look for the best place for you.
Thank you.
Archana, sorry, Archana, you were about to say something.
No, sir. It was so nice to attend your lectures. So, you had been to Nagpur in ICRA last year. We have met before.
Yes.
Uh,
Oh, I see. Okay,
yeah.
Archana, I'm sorry.
So, yeah. And I had a privilege to work with one palliative care as a part-time person because I myself practice pain clinic other than palliative. So mine is pain and palliative. So I do give consultations for cancer patients also. And but
Archana?
palliative as
Archana, did you have a problem with access to opioids?
not at all, sir.
Okay. So Maharashtra, Janapur
Yeah.
is a bit better. So
Yes, sir.
Ashish, where are you from? I'm just calling out names that I can see in front of me.
Hello, sir. This is Dr. Ashish. I'm from Mumbai.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which institution are you from? If I may
So,
ask?
sir, currently I'm not associated with any institution, and I am actually planning to start my own clinic.
Very
And,
good.
Yeah.
Ashish, this is not only to Ashish and Arsha, to everyone. If you have problems with opioid access, do please get in touch us and let us work with your state drug controller to make it happen. Dr. Arvind.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Arvind Patel, you told me about your problem. So what I understand is that you are a pain physician, interventional pain physician, but interventional pain physicians also need multimodal treatment. You need opioids. And because the new roles, you have a problem. So I explained the legal regulations. If the drug controller says only RMIs will have access to morphine, fentanyl, and methadone, technically, legally, they are correct. So unless the Department of Revenue, I told you, there's a big problem there. The Home Ministry is planning to take over the whole thing. Then it will take another year or two for things to boil down to some action. Therefore, my strong recommendation is for the time being, do apply as an RMI. Get the RMI status. Let us assist you. We'll give you the forms. It's not complicated at all. My only recommendation to everybody is whenever you apply by registered post. Keep the receipt with you, because after 2 months, we will have to send another letter by registered post within 2 months, saying that this I should have got within 2 months. I have not got it. This is legally mandatory. Please do it immediately. And then we'll follow. Dr. Arvind, I'm sorry that I do not have a better, easier solution.
I know.
I'll now await your questions or comments.
Yeah. See, what is happening since I started my practice in 84, I never find difficult to get a morphine, pethidine, or any other drugs which is available at a point of time. Now with this new rule, it's really difficult to get it. Second thing, I'm working as an anesthesiologist also. And I don't know whether you are aware or not, but Gujarat is having maximum number of a small nursing home practice. So, and around 5,000 anesthetists working in a small nursing home, small village places, they use fentanyl freely till today. Now, suddenly the flow has stopped. So what about the acute care also, post-operative? See, this law always has considered about only palliative work and not considered anything about the acute pain services.
A lot of people are angry. With all good intentions, the rules were changed and it has created a problem. It was supposed to improve access. It has actually hindered access. I totally understand your anger and it is well founded. Having said that, with the problem with the government of India, unless we can persuade right now, the file has been with the finance minister for more than a year. Unless we can persuade the finance minister to bring out the revised order, which may be difficult because the Home Ministry thing, I am giving the practical solution. It is unfair, it is cruel that your patients are beneath morphine. But the solution right now seems to be application for status of RMI. And that I understand is fairly easy in Gujarat now. So it is unfair that a law has actually, well-meaning law has actually caused a problem.
Actually speaking, MCI curriculum, anesthesiologists are fully trained to use opioids. So there is no other training is required to use opioid, or particularly anesthesiologists. So they have to consider that all anesthesiologists degree holder, they are well trained to use opioids and they don't have to go for the training.
Dr. Arvind, as I said, the person to decide on that, unfortunately now, is the state drugs control. Because the Ministry of Health of Government of India failed to come out with an order saying what is the right regulation. If they had said that people with postgraduate qualifications in such and such subject are considered qualified to treat pain, there would have been no problem. But the rules are there with the drugs controller. The point that you have made just now, as in Tamil Nadu, there is no problem because the drug controller accepts it. So if the drug controller says, no, that is not enough, you need a certificate of training, then unfortunately, I believe, unless the drug controller has been persuaded, he is following the rule. So unless he accepts that any MD anesthesia is enough, then the rules mandate a training in pain management.
Right. Now, from yesterday, I am behind all this ISA office bearer with Dr. Naveen and Dr. Murli, that ISA has to take this issue and do something to include the anesthesiologist as a trained person. Naveen was telling the same thing, that all anesthesiologists are trained because it is under MCI curriculum.
Hmm.
But I said that because of the law, it is not possible to get it. So I think ISA has to intervene in this also, along with other.
Yeah, it is a question of persuading the drug controller. Right. What I would recommend is ISA, when it writes to the drugs controller, that's all that is needed. A letter in registered post saying that Dr. Arvind, I can help with the wording if you like. The NDPS rules mandate training in pain management. MD anesthesiology already includes pain management in the curriculum. Therefore, please accept all MD degrees in anesthesiology as adequate qualification. Send it by registered post, and along with that also send your application for RMI status, and that should be hopefully that will take care of it, because when ISA also intervenes, I think it should be quite a powerful thing. I totally agree, Dr. Arvind. Patients need these medicines. It's not only about oral morphine. It is cruel to deprive a person with myocardial infarction or
Yes.
a road traffic accident of these medicines. It is their right. It is not anybody's favor. I am sorry that our well-intended rules have created this problem. And I am sorry, though we could persuade the government, the Indian Parliament to change the law. It got, the rules got caught up in the bureaucratic wrangles. But very happy to provide any assistance in this matter.
Yeah, just before I joined the meeting, Dr. Naveen has called me that this RMI regulation is try to understand.
Do you mean Naveen Salins from Manipal or somebody else?
No, Naveen, who is
Dr. Naveen
ISS
Malhotra.
secretary. Yeah.
Okay.
At a moment, he is an office bearer, right?
Okay, good. Thank you, Dr. Arvind, for joining us and bringing out the problem, because you this was this for your information, but you brought out a problem that could be relevant to many people. Anybody else, any comments or questions? It is time, Sunil, for your feedback session, is it?
Thank you,
Sunil,
Doctor.
back to you. Thank you, Dr. Arvind.
Sir, I just had a quick question. This is Dr. Ashish.
Yes, Ashish.
Yeah, sir. So I just wanted to confirm, as I recently informed you that I'll be starting my clinic soon, but as of now, I don't have it. So will that create any hindrance in my application process?
Yes, you will need to show that you have the physical facility. The only thing that the drug inspector may come and check is whether you have a room safe enough to stock the morphine.
Okay.
They will come. By the time the drug inspector comes for a potential visit, they may not, but they may. You should have a room that you can show is safe and a steel cupboard where you can stock the morphine. These will be mandatory. And so unless you already have a place, it may be difficult.
Okay. And the storage facility cannot be home, right? Sorry, cannot be an house, right?
It can be if that house puts up a sign of an medical institution, because it can be only for a medical institution. If your house, 2 rooms in your house are acting as your clinic, maybe you will have to show that they will ask for evidence that this is a medical institution. So
Okay.
for most of us, it will be okay. You will have a certificate of registration with the local government as a hospital, as a clinic. Some evidence like that will be necessary, because you
Okay.
will not be allowed to store it. If you call it your residence, it will have to be called an institution. So some
Okay.
registration process also may become necessary. The registration of medical institutions is a matter of state rules. It varies from state to state. In our state, we only go to the local government, panchayat or municipality or whatever. In Delhi, everybody goes to the director of nursing homes. So that with whom the institution is registered will be governed by a state law, not the Opioid and Psychotropic Substances Act, but by the state law regarding any medical institutions.
Okay,
And I
sir.
have one question.
Yes. Sunil, I will take that. Sorry to intrude on your time. Shall we take that as a last question?
Can one freelance anesthesiologist keep the medication at a 3 nursing home?
At where?
See, I am a RMI, and
Yeah.
can I have 3 places to keep the?
3 places? No, it will have
No.
to be in one place, but you can do one thing. On a daily basis, you can take the medicine to another place.
Okay.
Or that's only with the person concerned. So I'll tell you what we do. We do OP in several outpatient clinics in several hospitals once a week, daily in a medical college hospital. So every day, a certain stock of morphine is carried with the team. And at the evening, the remainder is brought back, all the documentation is done. Your stock will have to be kept in one place. I'm sorry to give you bad news. You can take it to the other place on a daily basis and document it.
Okay. Thank you.
Sunil, back to you. Arun?
Yes, sir. I think sir, Sunil sir is busy with some conversation.
Okay, Arun. I will stay back till Sunil comes back. Would you like to, Arun, would you like to go ahead with the feedback session while I stay back and pretend to be Sunil?
Sir, I think Sunil sir is here. Sunil sir?
Okay.
Yeah.
It's time
Okay,
for
okay, Sunil, I suppose you don't need me now.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, everybody. Hey, it was good to have this group together. My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So now we would like to hear from you regarding the feedback regarding this course. So I request everybody to say something about. You can say the positive and what we have to improve regarding this course. So please, somebody start sharing.
Hello, I would like to say something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Archana from Nagpur. It was wonderful session all throughout, and the topics covered were very much in detail, and really it has taken my knowledge to a level and inspired me to read more about palliative care. Before also I had read about palliative care, but this was in depth, really in depth. And there is only one problem I face, that palliative care physician, like when you do some education, some course in palliative care, I feel there is, I don't know, because of lack of funds or what, employment is not is a problem. I mean, I was attached with a palliative center, but after say 3-4 months, because of this I think corona thing, they said that we are not affording your salary, so you just be attached with us without salary. And this is a scenario I feel I have seen all over most of the palliative centers who are not in a good shape, like in Kerala state, like yours. They are in in a very first phase, I would say primary phase of palliative care. So to improve them and all, funds are required. So, and good doctors are required. So like either you have to do it for free or just stay away. I don't know. But this course has given me a very good insight to read. And yes, thank you so much, all of you, Dr. Sunil, Rajlakshmi, sir, of course, very nice.
Thank you, Dr. Archana. And you are true in a way. Even that the salary problem is one of the problems that many palliative care physicians face. Not only during Corona, but also during the regular employment. So I think maybe as the MDs are coming in palliative care, so
Yes.
I hope that things will improve maybe over the next few years.
Yeah, I hope, because then only people will come in this field and work. If you are I mean, if people know that if you have to work without salary, I think not many youngsters will come in this field. And that will be really a great, full-time job.
Yeah,
And it's not a part-time job. That is what I understood. By working part-time, I understood that it is not a part-time job. So I really feel that, that a little bit of this thing, if comes, I mean, then people will start coming in this field and start working full-time. And this field will grow up, like, and more organized way, like.
Thank you.
Something should be done. Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Dr. Mahesh here from Rajasthan. Sir, throughout this session it was excellent, and when we can come to your center to see all these things and communications, some more things we want to know and learn.
Yeah, we have not start accepting the students as of now, but we will definitely let you know. I think maybe in a couple of months we will start accepting. So we will definitely let you know. Definitely.
Thank you, sir.
When will we get certificates, sir?
So Rajlakshmi will be sending you the certificate after evaluation of the assignment.
Okay.
Sir, there is some criteria there, sir. First, they have to complete their assignments. Second one, minimum 80% of attendance. And if they, once they completed their assignments, and they have to score minimum of 70% of mark. It's a criteria to get the certificate.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes, of course. I am aware of it. Yes. I think I have completed them. That's why I asked.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Dr. Sunil,
Hello. Okay. I think somebody else wants to go ahead, so I'll just wait.
Yeah.
Okay, it's me, Dr. Abir. Dr. Sunil, it was a wonderful session throughout. All the way, it was very good. And I was thinking of to tell some negative, but I couldn't find one. It was excellent all the way throughout all this 1.5 to 3 months. I mean, it has been excellent, well-timed, well-selected topics. And one good thing was it was done online, so we were able to attend from different parts of the world. So let's continue this program, and maybe if we have some doubts or something in between when we go to patient care, whom can we contact, or what is the way to contact? There is one thing which
Actually, we can keep the WhatsApp group, and you can ask doubts in the WhatsApp group, or else you can send an email to me or somebody from the ECHO team, so that we will try to help you.
Yeah, thank you. That was good.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yeah, I think Dr. Ashish was going to.
Yes. So I just want to say a couple of words. So I basically have graduated from Russia. So back then in my state institution, we had palliative care. So I have seen how the palliative care was done, but after coming back to India in 2013 onwards, when I was working with government institutions, I never saw a palliative care, and I saw a lot of people, even with myocardial infarction, never receiving morphine. So that actually troubled me a lot. And I don't know, after 4 or 5 years of my working in research and maybe in a lot of hospitals, eventually when I started working with started this course, and I'm seeing that there is access, at least in, maybe I can say, roughly 5% of India, but even that made me feel so good that yes, it is there. And this gave me an opportunity to, even I'll be probably able to facilitate that morphine, or that required palliative care or pain care management in my vicinity. So I am very much thankful for that, because I can just say one thing. For 7 years I had continuously seen that back there in state institutions in Russia, it was helping a lot of people, and they were never agonized with the pain. And I just want to change that part, or that face of medicine in India, that yes, we all should come together and take that pain and agony from the society. Yeah, so thank you very much. And it was great and wonderful sessions, because that definitely helped me to understand all the regulations which are present in India with respect to palliative care and narcotic act. So that was a great thing. So thank you very much for the entire course.
Thank you, Dr. Ashish. Yeah, any of you can contact us for any help regarding palliative care. Either you can message me or somebody from our team. Okay, Dr. Mahesh was saying 1 or 2 sessions had more information, but the time was a problem, so make it 2 sessions. Okay, Dr. Mahesh, if you can message us which session you can select, we can try to do that. Anybody else? Anybody else?
Hello, sir. Dr. Ashish again. I had one query. I actually received my scores only for first assignment, and after that, I never received my scores. So I just want, just in case, whatever is there pending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't. Do you know? Have you started evaluating the second assignment?
Yes, sir, it is started, sir.
Okay. I think maybe within a few days you will get a score.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And Dr. Archana says she has not received any assignment score. So I don't think that. So please unmute and please speak. Somebody else, we would like to know your feedback because it will help us for the next course. So if you want us to improve something, please, if you can tell that, it will be very helpful also. Anybody?
Sir, you're asking for feedback, right?
Yeah.
Sir, actually, this was very helpful. It actually helped me a lot. See, I have already done diploma in anesthesia like many years back. I did have some training in palliative care, but not to this extent, if you ask me. And I think all this should have been included in the MBBS curriculum itself. So many things are useful for everyone. And I always recommend it for all my friends. And as I said before, we are actually planning on starting a palliative care service in our hospital. We are a small hospital. We have lots of constraints, space-wise, infrastructure-wise, but still we are interested and hopefully we can follow it through with your help, sir.
Yeah, actually, I think this thing has started. Yes, I was looking to start a palliative care unit since 2019 or 18, I think.
Yeah, actually, we do have
But,
chemotherapy.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely. If you need any help, please contact us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any more feedback? Yeah, Dr. Madhu says she's working in medical oncology as a junior assistant. So she happened to see a lot of these situations discussed in our class. I was able to understand the basis of treatment and understand the concept better. Okay, thank you, Dr. Madhu. Anybody else? Okay, I think we have to wind up the session. So thank you all for your feedback and
Hello, sir.
somebody.
Sir,
Yeah,
I'm
Dr.
Zahra. Sir, as a dental professional, sir, I feel like it is very much informative, sir, the class was. But many of my senior staffs, they already participated in this prior. They told like this Pallium has many other courses which you should do that way, they have told. Like training courses you need to follow. Otherwise, It will be like during the sessions, actually, bit of sessions were very much informative and understanding, but certain things were out of our like circle, out of our syllabus.
Yeah.
I feel so find bit difficult to follow, but other than that, I feel like it should be as Dr. Bismi told, it should be in our UG curriculum. Basics of palliative should be there in every UG curriculum, so that it is a part of our profession, sir, actually. So I would like to know if there is any more courses, training courses. Could you please inform?
Okay, so we are doing both online and on-site training. But as of now, we are not able to conduct on-site training, and it's mainly 6 weeks course. So once it is available, I think we will publicize it in the social media, in the Facebook, and even our our Palimedia webpage. You can visit, and which will give you all the information regarding training. Okay.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon.
I'm Dr. Gavur. Basically, I'm most of the time attending as working as a psychiatrician in a district hospital. In COVID times, we have almost summarized 193 patients in a rural hospital. But the problem here was again with those morphine tablet is not available in our hospital. So it is very difficult in today's session, as some help would be there to apply for a license for narcotic drugs. But it is always painful to see a patient in agony, often myocardial infarction. We cannot decrease his pain. We have summarized almost 190 patients in COVID times also in this last 1 year in a rural hospital. It's a very big number. And one more query I have, I was not able to attend a few of the classes in between due to the busy schedule of the government. And please guide me for that. How can I just complete that, those things? Thank you.
Okay. Arun or Rajesh will help you in attending the session.
Okay, sir. Anyway, we will contact you, or otherwise our program officer will contact you and send you the details.
Thank you. Thank you.
Arun,
Yes, sir.
please mute everybody else. Okay, so I think we can. Thank you all for being with us for this last landing session, and it was our privilege to have you with us. So actually, even though we were on the facilitation and we were able to get many important learning points from you, because each of you are expert in your own field. So this was a mutual learning. So thank you all, and we would like to thank all the faculties who took classes for this SCPM session. And thank you, Rajalakshmi and Arun. Without whom it was an impossible task, because many things are involved in conducting an ECHO program. So thank you both, Arun and Rajalakshmi. And I would also like to thank our partner in conducting these sessions, ECHO India. So thank you, ECHO India. Thank you all. Thank you, everybody who are involved in conducting this program. Thank you. Arun, it's over to you.
Okay, thank you, sir, and thank you all for being with us. And I shared the feedback link in chat box. Please do it now. It's a request. And one more request I have, please complete your assignments as soon as possible. We have already shared the link. And those who are to resubmit the assignment, please do it. And should you have any queries regarding our course or any assistant, me and Rajalakshmi is here to assist you. Okay, thank you everyone. We wind up the session, sir.